Hey everyone, it's Apex and I'll be doing a 3v3 tier list today. When I was looking at some of the other tier lists out there, I noticed a lot of them were missing some of the best comps as well as a huge chunk of them. So I will show you 35 different 3v3 compositions and I will show you where they all stack up against each other. So let's go. Okay, two quick disclaimers before we start. I'm assuming that every spec and class in this list has at least 90% of their BIS gear, and also this is just my educated opinion on this tier list, so if you disagree with anything, that's fine. And also, if you don't see your comp on this list, it doesn't mean that it might not be viable or not good, but it's most likely if it's on this list, it's definitely at the very least viable or good. So, starting with MLS. Crazy damage with Bloodlust. Usually the lock is playing Destro. This is one of the variants where Destro is usually the option. Affliction can work too, but that's typically the main thing. So MLS, I'll be putting that in the great tier. It's very strong. It can just struggle a little bit as they don't really have any dispels outside of the lock pet, but they could even be running Succubus and then they have none. So Vanguards Cleave, absolutely insane damage. They don't have MS, Desecration plus Freedom, Hodge Repent, Strangulate, Fear, maybe Mind Control. You have Offensive Dispel and MD, so you can kill a mage quickly after a block, and then nutty damage with the aids. Pally can also play Preg, but they usually are ret. This comp is very good. I'll be putting it probably at the bottom of great or higher end of good. I think I'll just put the higher end of good. But yeah, Vanguard's comp, very good, very good. Then we have LSD. This comp is insane, especially at the early parts of Wrath, as Resto Druids are, they basically become a little weaker throughout Wrath. They have insane healing per second, but they don't have their dispels, and they don't have really any cooldown that stops huge damage. So for instance, they have Arcskin for themselves, but if someone's taking a ton of damage output, you have NS for high healing, and of course Swiftman and the great heals that they have, but they don't have any big defensive like a Pain Sup or a Sack or a Hand of Sacrifice or Blessing of Protection, something like that. But it's still extremely good, and I'll be putting it at the top as it's great through all of Wrath. Now I have Beast Cleave with the Holy Pally. This comp is pretty good, very scary. The Pally can keep them up, and then the pressure with Wind Shear, Tremor, the Bestial Wrath is crazy damage. But once that's gone, they're losing. So they have to win in the first, 30 to 50 seconds, or it's probably over. So this comp's pretty decent. I'll be putting it probably on the lower end of good. It'll be better earlier on in Wrath, as Beast Cleave in general is better earlier in Wrath. Then I have LSD 2. This became really popular actually in Cataclysm, and it's still decent, but LSD is certainly better. But the Boomkin variant is very good too. You do have still Bloodlust with the rest of Shaman, and huge damage with Starfall. You can play Affliction or Destro, both are very good. I would be putting this probably on the higher end of great. It's a little weaker than LSD. Just for some reason, this synergy is just a little stronger, and I guess Ellie Shamans are very strong too. We have God Cleave. This is not God Comp, but God Cleave. Boomkin, Ellie, Holy Pally. The Pally can keep them up with crazy healing, all his cooldowns, bop. And if you guys get like Blade's Edge or Sewers, T-Storm plus Typhoon is insane. You can get T-Storm down to a 35-second cooldown with Glyph, and then I believe Boomkins can get Typhoon to like 17 seconds. Like by the time melee get back up on Sewers, they're back down with the Typhoon. I mean, it's crazy. So if you get the right map, it's insane. But if you get Nagrand or like Ruins, you could get run over by a melee cleave or like a Hunter comp. Very good. I'll be putting it probably on the lower end of great or the higher end of good, but it's definitely decent. Good comp. I have LSPriest. This is the LSD variant with the Priest. It's a little more offensive than the other two variants, but it's still pretty good, as its only real weakness is that the Priest can get kind of run over, but then you still have T-Storm and Teleports if you get Blade's Edge or Sewers. Very strong, huge burst. Then you have 4 dispels a second. Then if you're playing Fell Hunter, you have 2 people on your team who can dispel, and then the Shaman can tremor you guys out, plus grounding. Then you have 2 healers, so very good. I'll be putting on the lower end of best, as I think this comp's extremely strong. You could basically run Lock Shaman, like Lock Ellie with anything. It's such a powerful synergy, and it's mainly because Destro and Ellie has nutty damage, and then if you're playing Affliction, you still just have great damage, which allows the Ellie to do the burst to finish them off. Now Beast Cleave with the Dis variant. I think this is a little weaker than the Holy Pally variant. It's still very good though, especially earlier on in Wrath, and it just struggles where the Priest can really get killed. The Beast Cleave can go and kill somebody, but if they're against a Holy Pally team and the Priest can't MD, then the Beast Cleave is going to fail to kill the healer, and then they'll definitely be killing your Disc Priest, as a Holy Pally is much stronger at living. And then we have Shatterplay. This comp's very good. Mage Shadow is just scary in all of Wrath. Those two have insane synergy. Just their bursts, the way they can kite for each other. The way they can peel so well for each other to let like MSs fall and then heal back up. And then you add in Lust and Purge and Tremor, and this comp is really crazy. I'd probably be putting it probably right behind LSD, but ahead of the Dis variant. And then we have FMP. This is basically RMP, except the Feral has great CC and much higher damage than the Rogue. However, the burst is lower and it's less controlled because most of the burst is from Ferocious Bite, and that's, are you going to crit or not? You crit, that's like 13,000 on a really geared player, so that's crazy. I think this one's more on the lower end of good or the high end of viable. It's still decent. You have Clone, Poly, CS, Deep Freeze. You got your Fear, Mind Control. You have 3 dispels a second with the double dispel priest and then the 1 mage. So I'd probably be putting it, I think I'd put in the higher end of viable. I would say the Rogue variant's stronger, but it's certainly not bad. This comp is not bad at all, and you can definitely win with it. I have LSP. This comp I think is really crazy. It's like LSD, except you have more defensive cooldowns with the Pally. He can't CC much, all he has is Hajj. And the burst Holy does is weak in terms of offensive burst. But Sacred Cleansing with the freedoms, and you got T-Storm, and then you got Fears and Hex and all that. It's just crazy synergy. And the Pally's bop sometimes is what you really need to live. And the rest of Druid doesn't have that. And then you have the Sax, of course, to prevent him from getting CC'd, and then the Lock and Shaman can kind of do well, even if the Pally somewhat gets CC'd through Grounding, Fell Hunter Dispel, and Tremor. So very strong comp. I'll be putting this ahead of everything so far. I have MLD. This comp is very good. I think the MLS variant is a little better, as I think the Resto Shaman just gives a little more pressure, which is what this comp really needs to force someone defensive so they don't die, as they're lacking MS. So I'll be putting this one in good. I'll probably be putting it on the higher end of good, as their CC together is insane. And as long as they don't get run over by something, like for instance Vanguards Cleave, I mean Vanguards or Beast Cleave could just run over any of the 3. It would be hard for him to kill the Lock though if it's like Blade's Edge or Sewers, but that's their one weakness. Versus the Pally or even the Resto Shaman variant, I think just does a little better at surviving. So that's where I'd put them. I have Unholyplay. Insane damage, even if they're training your Shatterpriest. The DK's damage is so crazy, you just need a little bit of help from the priest, and you can get help by easily death gripping a healer or somebody and then getting a fear. So even if your priest is getting trained, you'll still be able to get maybe a double or triple fear consistently. So that's extremely powerful. And then the Holy Pally helps them stay up, as you really need a Holy to keep up the Shatterpriest. So I don't think I'd play this with any other healer variants. You could play with like a Druid or Resto Shaman. A Resto Shaman variant would have insane damage, but I think you need to play with the Pally to survive. And if they don't go on your priest, they're dying no matter what. So very good comp. I'd put it though at like tier 2. I'd probably put it ahead of God Cleave, but I would maybe put it behind the others. The Destro Lock paired with the Boomkin has such a good matchup on half of the maps. And then this comp still does insane damage with Lust, and the Lock's probably Destro anyway. Okay, now I have PhD. This comp is extremely strong. Very famous comp. The Holy Pally gives tons of survival, and then the insane DK damage and pressure, along with the Hunter's Burst and MS effect. And the Roar of Sacrifice even is a huge defensive cooldown on a short cooldown. So this comp pretty much has everything except the double dispel, but then you also have Sacred Cleansing, and you have Freedom to keep the DK on something, and then you also have the Hunter Freedom for the DK. It's just got like everything it really needs. It's a little harder for the Hunter sometimes to CC, as the DK might be aidsing everything, but your damage along with MS is so high, it sometimes doesn't even matter. So I'll be putting this very high. I'll probably be putting it just a little under LSD, LSP, and Shatterplay. Probably put it ahead of the Priest LSP variant. They have PriestHD. A little more offensive than the Holy Pally variant. However, it's a lot easier for the Priest to die. You can kill mage teams a lot easier, but it's going to struggle a lot more with double melee cleaves or any DK team, especially DK teams like Vanguards Cleave especially will run over that priest, and it'd be pretty hard for them to win. And they could even rot, you know, the DK and Hunter while they're doing it. I'd put this one a bit lower, but not a ton lower. I'll probably be putting it around the higher end of great or middle of great or so. And we've got African Turtle Cleave, one of the best names. This comp does insane burst. You have Gag Order, so you can like double silence. Shockwave stun a lot of people with huge burst. Mortal Strike from the Hunter, huge burst from him. Trap. And then you got the AoE Spell Reflect with the Prot, so you can stop your Pally from getting CC'd or trapped. So that's really cool. That's a very cool playstyle. And this comp needs a lot of skill from the warrior, the hunter, and it's hard to play and you have to be very geared, but that's what we're assuming with this list. So I'll be putting it probably on the high end of great, but maybe on the lower end of best. It's very, very good. So I think I'll put it here for now. It might go a little higher, but yeah, it's going to at least go at the top of great. All right, PSP. I have not seen a ton of people playing this comp. I've been testing it more myself lately as the Ellie. I think it's pretty decent. I will be trying it this time around in Wrath. But considering I don't see it anywhere in the ladder and I don't really hear a ton of people talking about it, I think I will probably put it on the lower end of good. But it feels strong. The Shadow does a lot of damage. The Ellie has huge burst. You have 3 healers. And with T-Storm, if you get the right map, that's a huge appeal for anybody. And the Pally can help keep everyone alive. So mana can become an issue, but I think this comp's pretty good. So I'm going to put it probably on the lower end of good. I think, like, for instance, it would probably struggle a lot with Beast Cleave. I think Beast Cleave would probably just run over them with purges, get the hop off right away, and MS, and they just probably won't be able to heal through it. We have Jungle Cleave. This comp's quite strong. The Feral, it's a lot like Cupid Cleave, except you lose the Dispel and some of the utility of the Ret Paladin, but then you get the instant Cyclones and the great consistent damage from the Feral. I think I would put it in great, though. I don't think I'd put it as high, but it's still very strong. I think I'd probably be putting it probably a little below MLS, but I probably would put it ahead of Unholyplay because I think it would kill the... It would also beat Unholyplay in a 1v1. And these matchups would probably be close as the Mage, Boomkin, Destros can probably take them out. Probably about there. But the DK variant might be better, actually. I'm not sure. I think maybe I'd probably put Jungle a little below the DK variant, as the DK damage is just so insane, and you get that MS with the burst that comes with the Hunter, and it's so hard to heal through. So you don't even need to clone something when everything's dead. And then we have Kitty Cleave. This comp has insane pressure. The warrior alone does a ton, but then you have the Feral Bleeds, plus the clones that keep coming out, and you can tunnel somebody into the dirt and kind of take someone else a little bit out of the game. But then outside of that, you're going to be taking a ton of damage, and they're going to just be free casting or, you know, chopping up. Most likely your Feral. They're not going to probably kill the Pally, but they might force your Pally into a bad spot, and then they could swap to him and take him out very quickly. So this comp's certainly good. I think I'd probably put it at the lower end of good, or maybe... Yeah, I'd probably put it on the lower end of good or high viable. And we have God comp. This comp's very good. I think the Shaman version's a little better, but it's still very good. This comp actually was, I think, a little better in Cataclysm. That's one was really crazy. But I think I'd be putting this one probably on the higher end of great. I think I'd put it right here, as I do think the Shatterplay variant's better, but Frost Mage plus Shadow is just crazy. And earlier in Wrath, this will be stronger than at the end of Wrath. I have Shadow Cleave. Affliction Lock on a Holy DK, Holy Pally. This is stupid damage. Absolutely insane, unhealable damage. They don't have MS, but it feels like they do. And you have to somehow stay alive, though, so that you can do your crazy aids. So you're going to struggle with anything with really crazy burst. It's going to be more like your... It's going to be some hunter teams you're going to struggle with. They're going to be able to kill either of the DPS. But it's very good, and if you can just live a little, you're going to outdamage every other comp in the game. So I'll be playing this one pretty high. Probably... I think I'll put it a little ahead of Unholyplay. I think the Affliction Lock's a little better than the Shatterpriest. You lose the good Priest Dispel. You still Fel Hunter Dispel, but you get a lot more damage with the Lock, and then you also get the map advantage with the Teleport. But you also lose the MS that comes with the Shatterpriest, which is only 20%, but it's still good. So I put them really close, though. I would just put it a little higher. I have RLS. This comp was pretty famous with Wreckful and some other players back in Wrath. I don't think it's anywhere near as good anymore, though. I think people have learned the meta more. PvE gear is insane. If this was like an arena tournament server where you don't have all the good PvE gear and whatnot, and like tier 2 PvP weapons, I'd probably put this higher, but it doesn't feel that great. And then they have no Dispel outside of Fel Hunter. So I'll probably put it like the higher end of viable. We have RMD. Same story pretty much as RLS. I would say it's a little worse, though. Rogue Mage is insane together in BC. Absolutely gross how well those two synergize, but it's not like that in Wrath at all. They're much weaker together. Mages really want to be a Shadow Priest, and Rogues really want to be a Shadow Priest. So RMD will go much lower. I'll probably be putting it at the bottom of viable, or at least the bottom of what we have so far. They have Scooby Doo Cleave. I don't know how it got this name, but Sub-Rogue Ret Valley Disc. Crazy burst, but after the burst, it's really vulnerable. You have a mess though with the Rogue. You have a lot of CC early, but then once cooldowns are gone, you lose it. You know, Hajj, Repent, Blind, and you have all the DPriest stuff. So this one's very good, but once the Avenging Wrath's gone and the kind of the early CC has been used up, and the Rogue's used his evasions, he's going to die to a melee cleave. He's going to die once his cloak's down very quickly, and it'll flop. So I'll be putting this one probably at the lower end of viable. It could still kill people very quickly. MD, Dispel, and Huge Burst. And we have RPD. This one's a lot better than most of the ones I just mentioned, as Rogue Shadow has crazy synergy. So I'll be putting this one probably on the higher end of viable, or maybe low good. That might even not, actually no, they should probably be a little higher. Yeah, they should probably be more like, actually I think the Shaman version's slightly better, but if this comp plays really well, they can do decent. I just they can struggle with so many comps, I feel like, with getting out enough pressure compared to what some of the other comps can do, especially the Lock and DK teams. So I'll probably put this one probably like right here, I'd say. Then RPS, this one's a little higher damage with the Shaman, and it's similar to the Druid version, just less CC, but then you have the Offensive Purge, which helps a lot. And then the Totems and Lust gives a ton of damage to the Shadow, especially, and also the Rogue. So I'd put this one a little higher, probably higher than Kitty Cleave. This PSP one, I still don't know exactly where I'd put this, but I still feel like that's a decent spot. They have Shadow Cleave, lots of dots. It's like the DK variant I mentioned earlier, Unholyplay and Shadow Cleave, but the Fear CC DR is not the greatest, so I would put this one a little lower, as that can hurt you a lot. And then the rest of Shaman does give insane damage, but it can, any of these three can die, especially if you get in a Grand or like the Ruins map. So I believe I'll be putting Shadow Cleave probably on the lower end of great. It's very good, insane damage. Maybe I'd put it ahead of God Cleave. Yeah, I think I put it just a little ahead of God Cleave. But if you get God Cleave on the right map, that comp's insane. Now we have Spicy Chicken Cleave. This feels like a meme, and it plays like a meme. The fire basically just runs around the whole time. Dragon's Breathing people being super annoying, getting immune to kicks because of his one Burning Determination talent. And then the boom can just typhoons people off if it's the right map. And then with Lust, they can do a lot of damage to Starfall. But the burst isn't very controlled, and they only have the one ice block, and then the Boomkin can kind of die. So it's certainly a good comp though, and I probably would put it on the higher end of viable, or maybe in the middle actually. Yeah, I'd probably put it like right here, but it's not bad. We have Thug Cleave, extremely scary comp. This comp I remember, and I think it was Mop, was pretty insane. It's either Mop or Kata. I think it was probably, I can't recall. But this comp was really crazy, and in Wrath, it has insane burst. It has double MS, so you won't have an issue keeping that up. But once their cooldowns are kind of gone early, that's it. And they're one of the Rogue or the Hunter are dying, or maybe even the Disc. So I probably put this on the higher end of, or middle of good probably. Maybe like right here. It's quite strong. It has the burst of an enhanced BM Hunter basically. But then they have a lot higher DPS overall, it feels like. So I'm not sure. These all feel pretty similar though. Then we have Thunder Cleave. This comp is very, very strong. You have the best DPS caster, the best healer, and the best melee in the game. Naturally, all three combined do extremely well. The Ellie Shaman typically plays a very high resil setup, like 1500 plus resil at the end of the game, even up to 1600, which you can do. And they don't struggle with much. The only thing that can feel hard for them is if they can somehow isolate the warrior and really burst him down, like he gets too overextended, so then he has to pull back and do no damage, or he goes too far in and they can just kind of get exploded. So that's really the only weakness, but this comp's nutty, and I would put it at the very top. I have TSG, crazy damage, crazy pressure. Warriors have some of the highest damage of the game, plus Unrelenting Assault and MS, so crazy pressure, plus DK's nuts damage equals something's dying very quickly, if not multiple people. And then if you're able to Bladestorm multiple people with the aids, it's crazy. And then the Pally can keep everyone up for a little bit, but once their cooldowns are gone, they flop. It's someone's dying, they swap to the Holy Pally, he dies, maybe they just kill the DK, AMS is gone, they just tunnel through him. So that's kind of its one weakness, but this comp's very good. Now I'll be putting it near the top. I think I'd put just a little under Shatterplay, or maybe maybe just a little under PhD, as PhD can really kill it pretty quickly. But that's actually still a close matchup. But anyway, going to turbo, this comp's not bad. It's like the kitty cleave, but a little better. The enhanced gives a lot more utility. You get your pally out of the fears, and then the range wind shear helps a lot. And then it can prevent some CC on you guys with the Earthbind totem, dispelling your warrior constantly. So then you can have freedom plus the Earthbind sort of freedom. And that gives you a little more uptime than the kitty cleave variant. So I'll be putting this one a little higher than kitty cleave. I'll probably be putting it just a little under beast cleave maybe, or just a little ahead of it. I'd say if it's early wrath, then beast cleave would be better, but later on turbo would probably be a little bit better. So I'd probably do this, or maybe just a little ahead of Vanguards Cleave. I put it probably about there. Double LS. This was kind of played by Hoodrich a little bit, as well as the Resto Druid variant. But the Resto Shaman variant I think is a little better, as the Druid's really disrupting their own Warlock a lot, and you kind of lose out some of the utility. So I'd put this one pretty high. I would put it ahead of RLS. I'd probably put it at the top of Viable. The Warrior really needs constant dispels, so that's why this comp's not higher up. It really, really needs to have some dispels. And then we have Ret Enhanced Disc. I haven't seen this comp played a ton, but it's not bad. I'm going to be trying it out myself in Wrath. I think it's pretty decent. It just lacks MS. It has tons of healing, lots of utility. You have double defensive dispel, plus all the stuff the Shaman brings. And the damage that can randomly come out is so high. And the Pally's probably playing Preg as well. So they just have tons of damage the whole time too. This comp's pretty good. I'm going to say it's probably like lower end of great, or maybe a higher good. I think I'd probably put it probably put it on the higher end of good. I think this comp's pretty good, and I think we'll see it, but I'm not positive. And then lastly, we have Volcano Cleave. This is Ellie, Frost Mage, Holy Pally. You can also play it as Fire Mage, but I think the Frost variant's way better, as that'll help kite, and that's what the Ellie really needs. So I'd probably put this one on the lower end of good, or maybe a higher viable. It's not the best as Hex and Poly DR, and you'd like to have another defensive dispel or something, but it's not bad. The lock variant's a lot better though, and the Shatterplay variant even. So I'd probably be putting this one probably on the lower end of good. I think I'd put it behind the Shadow Rogue, as that would just run over this comp with MD, kill the mage real quick, maybe even the Ellie. So yeah, that is pretty much my 3v3 tier list, guys. So if you like this video, please throw the video a like and subscribe if it helped you, and I'll see you guys in my next one.